Everybody. This is Ask Me Anything About Politics. So, if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the place where you can ask all those questions. You don't have to worry about getting roasted or ridiculed or judged or debated or anything like that. So, yeah, this is not a fighty show. This is not a show where I call people up and call them stupid or own them or debate them or whatever. We are just here to engage in good faith about politics so that people can be better informed, so that we can all have a shared understanding of what our government is doing, so that we can talk openly and sincerely about differences that we have about certain policies and whatnot. Or, if you're somebody who's more of a novice and you want to know what simple things are like the filibuster or continuing resolutions or reconciliation. This is the place where you can ask those questions as well. Donnie says, I have a question. Why do you people rely on social media for political answers and not do their own? What a weird thing to say, Donnie. It's like you're coming in real hot, number one. It's like you're saying, like, why do you people rely on social media? Like, you're making a bunch of assumptions about people, which are completely unfair. But the fact of the matter is, Donnie, is that the majority of people in this country get their news off of social media. And so it's an important place to engage with people, regardless of the fact that it is extremely unreliable to get your news off of social media. So, I'm just here trying to be part of the good voices that are, spreading the truth and engaging with people in good faith and not just getting into fights with people. So thanks for being here, Donnie. Maybe let's take the temperature down a little bit. Osher says the Ranked Choice website is live. I hope you're able to check it out. I haven't yet, Osher. Thank you for reaching out. I do appreciate it, but it's been a little bit of a week for me, so I am a little bit behind on correspondence like yours. But thanks again for being here. Thanks for reaching out, Christopher Christo Towner, Christoner. Christowner69 says, why are the vast majority of elected politicians support Israel? So, Christ owner, there are a myriad of motivations for politicians to potentially be in support of, or at least scared of, AIPAC, Israel, Netanyahu, regardless. AIPAC is an extremely powerful lobbying organization that can lose you your election if you are not extremely popular and famous like AOC. Then any criticism of Israel can be turned by them into anti-Semitism, and then you can lose your primary or you can lose your election. But then there's other people who have malicious intent as far as like the support of Israel. Like a lot of people on the right are just straight up racist, and they like the fact that the people in Israel are more white than the people in the surrounding nations. There's also a bunch of Christian extremists in government who believe that we need to that the Jews need to take over that area to bring about the rapture. That is a real thing that a bunch of elected Republicans believe. And so if you don't like that, then you should vote against politicians that do that sort of thing. It is only because AIPAC and the Netanyahu government have been extremely successful at primarying or defeating any politician that is critical of Israel, that they continue to do it. If we refused to believe their propaganda, then they would not do that anymore. But, people keep on buying it and they keep on voting for the politicians that AIPAC helps get elected, you know? All right, scrolling down to the bottom, Mia's LV Adventure says, did you see the new South Park? I watched the opening. I'm glad they're fighting. Good for them. I have some real issues with the two South Park fellas for being the exact kind of centrist that drive me fucking bananas. But, credit where credit's due. Sometimes they hit the mark. Fago War Production says, imagine setting your foreign policy on accelerating the apocalypse. Yeah, can you believe that? Just because they're like, well, we're gonna get raptured to heaven, so I don't give a shit if y'all have to live on this hell that we created here for you. Always Sabbath Truthful says the USA is a shell company for Netanyahu. Some would say. I would not say that. Always sad, but some would say. Flamingo Mo, good to see you again. Heading to the warehouse club. Besides coffee, what should I stock up on pre-tariffs? I mean, anything shelf stable, I guess. Toilet paper and paper towels and stuff like that. Overflow says, I think South Park being centrist is great for TV, but that's it. I mean, I don't know. It's so fucking infuriating. Like, you do an episode about how climate change isn't real, and then you realize that it is. Like, where, like, it seems like you're just being contrarian as opposed to having any sort of ethos besides everybody but us is idiots, you know? CEO of Wealth says, why do you want to be asked about politics for? So I believe in creating spaces where people can engage in politics without fighting, and I believe that there should be places where you can ask a real human being questions about politics without getting roasted or judged or ridiculed or potentially attacked. You know, like there are places in this country where you can't ask certain questions about politics without fear of physical retribution. And so this is the place where you can ask all those questions. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. There's going to be no fighting here, no nothing. Amir says Trump cares more about the South Park than the genocide in Gaza. That is accurate. CEO Wells says, "Oh, I don't believe in either side anymore. I am finally awake." CEO of Wealth, I don't believe that that is an accurate perspective that you have there. One side of the political spectrum is better than the other by a lot, and it is important that we support the Democratic Party, if only to get rid of the worst politicians and worst political party. And if you would like to engage on that, I'm happy to. You know, I don't want to fight about it, but you know, I would love to showcase to you some points that I think are illuminating for people like yourself who think that both parties are the same and that, you know, both sides are equally bad or whatever. East meets West bestie. Thank you so much for all these gifts. I really appreciate it. SPF 420 says, "Can I ask something?" Absolutely. The chat is open. Tyro Pillar says, "I like your cut, G." Thank you. I got it yesterday, and it's a little too short on top for my taste. I like to be a little longer on taste. Let's see here. SPF 420 says, "I don't know what to ask. Hold on." Yeah, take your time, my guy. Mia's LV Adventure says, "Can you explain what a centrist is?" Absolutely. So a centrist, there's a bunch of different flavors of centrist. You know, like there's the uninformed centrist that just believes that there's like bad on both sides without really digging into the details. There's the informed centrist who believes that there are certain policies on the right that are good. There are certain policies on the left that they're good. They kind of judge the parties based on the communities also, where they're like, look, I don't like the extreme on the left or the extreme on the right, so I'm more of a centrist guy. And then they look for those candidates, you know. Yeah, you know, there's some people that are turned off by the label of socialist or communist that tends to get thrown around for the far left. And so they say, oh, you know, I prefer safer politicians like your Chuck Schumer's and your Nancy Pelosi's, you know, stuff like that. I don't really ascribe to centrism. I find it is, you know, you're trying to find similarity. You're trying to find common ground between, you know, a regular dude and John Wayne Gacy, in my opinion, and that doesn't seem to be very productive, in my opinion. But you know, I also believe that a lot of the centrist, a lot of the culturocentrism, a lot of the narratives around centrism, is a ploy by the billionaire class to dilute the power of progressive politics. Non-consensual learning says, "Why do you think Trump's tariffs are bad for the country?" So they are a tax on the 99%. Basically, we are all going to be needing to buy things like food and clothing and you know, building materials and whatnot. And so, as we are struggling through a cost of living crisis, this is going to increase the cost of living. It's going to accelerate inflation. It is going to slow our economy, and it's going to separate us from global trade, where countries like China that are, you know, actually that have a little bit more substantive trade deals with their country are just going to be lapping us. You know, like their economy is going to be growing. They're going to have access to more raw materials and technology. You know, it's tariffs should be a scalpel and not a shotgun. And these are not even a shotgun. It's more like an atomic bomb, you know. Drummer Boy says, "Isn't politics just an act by the same people? They say different but do the same." That is wildly inaccurate, Drummer Boy. The platforms of the political parties are different, wildly different. The politicians are wildly different, and the outcomes are wildly different. Like there are different things that happen in this country based on if there are Republicans or Democrats in charge, and there are different things in the states and cities where Democrats are in charge versus Republicans, etc. All right, CEO of Wealth says, "So tell me this, do you lean more towards the Democratic side?" Yes, CEO of Wealth, very much so. I'm a progressive. East meets Westy Bestie says, "By raising prices in everything imported, and everything has links to imported components." That is accurate. Cheese says, "Let me join." I almost never let people join, Cheese, but if you stick around, ask a couple of questions, prove to me that you're here in good faith, maybe I will change my mind. Will's World says, EU deal thoughts. I don't know if it's more money for goods coming into America than we were having to pay before. So the cost of living crisis that we are all suffering through right now, it's going to get worse. Maybe it would have been even worse if there wasn't a deal, because Trump was saying 30% on EU goods, and now it's only 15%. But it's still stupid. It's still hurting the 99%. You know, the billionaire class is going to be doing great. They're always doing great, you know. Alrighty, Will's World says over $1 trillion invested in our markets. I don't know what that sentence means. It feels like you're saying that that's a consequence of the EU trade deal, but I do not believe that that is accurate. All right, Fortnite fan says, how is the third world immigration to the U.S. changing the racial demographics and therefore culture? You know, I don't really have a strong opinion about, you know, what is a nation of immigrants, what is a melting pot, suddenly getting continuing to get immigrants. You know, it's like this has been America's whole fucking thing forever. Is you come here from wherever, and we all sort of melt together and create cool, weird new things. You know, where in small towns that only used to have, you know, like diners and McDonald's, is now you can find fucking Korean restaurants and Vietnamese restaurants and shit like that. So yeah, like what are the demographic changes? You know, there are more people of different ethnicities and religious backgrounds every year. You know, ever since America's inception, it has been that way. Alrighty, let's see here. Dr. Bob Fanboy says, best guess on who will control the House and Senate after 26. Dr. Bob Fanboy, my best guess is that whoever you work to elect will get elected, Dr. Fanboy. I don't do predictions here on the show. Rosalind, good to see you again. Lauren, hey, Honeynut29 says, how far do you think the deficit would drop if companies, billionaires, and churches pay taxes? Significantly, Honeynut. Potentially, we could have a surplus. Peter Thiel, ooh, definitely not the Peter Thiel. That's darn tootin'. Peter says, I got an internship at the White House. So excited to represent this nation. Yeah, man, I can't believe you're working for free, Peter Thiel. CEO of Wealth says, I hate that America is extremely diverse and divided. I mean, diverse and divided are two different things. You know, like CEO of Wealth, diverse is strength. Like having a diversity is good. I don't know if you know about like the Irish potato famine, but when you have only one type of thing, it makes you genetically weak. And so we should be, you know, like having as diverse of a gene pool as we possibly can for humanity to be stronger going forward. But as far as being divided, yeah, I completely agree with that. And that is why I think that we should all coalesce and organize together and stand up to the top 1%, so that make these fucking billionaires pay their fair share. There should not be people living on the street while these fucking assholes are flying around in their private jets and, you know, sailing the seas on their mega yachts and shit like that. Chasing Dreams 21 says, is Trump on the Epstein list? I think it's extremely likely that he is. It's extremely likely because they were really good buddies for a long time. They've been pictured together dozens of times. There's tons of stories of them hanging out together with underage women. There's a woman who accused Trump of raping her when she was 13 years old. And that Epstein was part of that. And the fact that the Trump administration is doing so much to hide all of their Epstein data is, I think, clear evidence that he is listed in there. And the FBI said that he was listed in there also. And that's the reason why they're hiding it, you know. CEO of Wealth says Trump, Biden, and all of them on their Epstein list. So CEO of Wealth, again, I don't think that you should be painting politicians in this broad brush. I have seen zero evidence that Biden was associated with Epstein at all. Clinton, 100%, seems like he was associated with Epstein, but Biden, absolutely not. When you say all of them, you're making it seem like every politician is a PDF file and that they're all exactly the same. And when you do that, you're giving cover for the worst ones, you know? If you're on a date with somebody who's a serial killer and then somebody says like, they're all the same, like, doesn't that deflate how bad it is to go on a date with a serial killer, you know? Fortnite fan says, what about Epstein's Mossad connection? Tenuous at best, I think. Chasing Dreams 21 says, why didn't the Biden administration release the list? So, according to Representative Ro Khanna, and I don't know how accurate this is, you have to double check it for me because I only did a little bit of research on this. Ro Khanna said that there were 3 attempts by the Democratic Party to get the Epstein information out there in 2019, 2020, and 2024. And there are good faith reasons why certain information is not available, like to protect the victims. Grand jury testimony is almost always sealed and requires a court order to get it, things like that. But the main point is that the White House is not supposed to direct the Department of Justice. There's supposed to be separation between the executive and the judiciary. What Trump is doing right now is authoritarian because he is trying to control every lever of government power. He is trying to control Congress. He's trying to control the judiciary. He's trying to fire people in the military and replace them with loyalists so that he is the one who has ultimate say over everything. But that's not what the president is supposed to do. And Biden maintained that separation between the White House and the judiciary. So he wasn't out there demanding the release. The person who was in control was a Republican named Christopher Wray, who was appointed by Donald Trump. And so if you would like to know why the Donald Trump appointed Republican Christopher Wray did not release the Epstein information, then you would need to ask Republican Trump appointed Christopher Wray. I just heard this today that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is talking to Donald Trump daily, which is wildly unethical. Like, that is, we should all be very pissed off about that. Just fucking throw that on the list of reasons why you should never vote for any Republican ever again, because they're fucking letting that happen. That is completely antithetical to the idea of balance of powers and checks and balances in this country. Steve Free says that is what the Democrats do. No, it is not, Steve Free. And if you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. Jay says both parties are corrupt and trying to take everything for themselves. Evil. That is inaccurate, Jay. Democrats are better than Republicans by a lot. And if you don't ask a question, I will boot you. Bobber says, are you crying? No, your mom cried last night when I fucked her because she was so happy. Yeah, baby. Good to see you again. Lapis says hello. Hello back, Lapis. Alrighty. Mia's LV Adventure says, why do I get vilified for being a progressive? I don't know, Mia, but you shouldn't be. Being progressives is where it's at. Triska, good to see you. Thank you for giving me the laughy face. I appreciate it. Scott Clower, Trump treats the AG as their personal attorney. That is accurate. Vitamin E, I appreciate you being here. Alrighty, let's see here. All right. Wind and Leaf 55 says, why are the Democratic Party so corrupt? The Democratic Party is not so corrupt. You're thinking of the Republican Party. Wind and Leaf, would you like me to go through all the various ways in which the Republican Party is leagues worse corruption-wise than the Democratic Party? Let me know, because if you're not here in good faith, then I don't want to waste my breath. CEO of Wealth, what was the facts thing that you said? You said not a good analogy, not trying to argue, just giving facts. You mean you're not giving facts, you're giving your opinion, CEO of Wealth. I don't want to fight you, but I'm giving you like data and you're just saying that I'm wrong. So if you want to actually give me something substantive to work with, I'm happy to engage with you on it. Dana says, are you accepting more guests? I have a question. Dana, I almost never accept guests. But if you ask a couple questions, prove to me that you're here in good faith, maybe I will change my mind. All right, scrolling down to the very bottom. Jay says they are both corrupt, and it's saying to align yourself with either team. No. Wow, you're really trying to use a loophole to stay in here. No, it is inaccurate to say that they are both corrupt. It is inaccurate to say that it is insane to align yourself with either of them. I am happy to put my fucking name and face and whole ass behind the accomplishments of the Democratic Party, as flawed as they are. Even if it is just to unelect every Republican, the Democratic Party is the fucking move. All right. DC Card Shark says they're both corrupt. They both support Zios as a result of AIPAC bribery. Guess what, DC Card Shark? You're out of here. That wasn't a question. So, yeah, I don't care if you have different opinions than me, but actually ask a question, be part of the conversation. Lapis169 says, question, isn't it a crime for the fat pumpkin to waddle out of his plane and come to my country? You know, I think it is a crime, but he's the president, so he's allowed to do whatever he wants. You know, he's got immunity thanks to his extremely corrupt Supreme Court. It's the Rocketeer. Good to see you again. There we go. Now I'm back where I belong. VPN was making Twitch screwy yesterday. Yeah, baby. Good to see you again. Do you think the U.S. will spearhead a BDS movement against Israel now that Trump has acknowledged the starvation of Gazans? I am extremely skeptical that this right-wing authoritarian government will do anything substantive to stand up to Israel. They don't give a shit about the people living in Palestine. They don't give a shit about the starvation. So, yeah, if it's in Trump's best interest that he's going to continue to advocate for Israel and continue advocating for, building, ethnically cleansing Palestine and building fucking Trump casinos there and shit like that. Yeah, I'm extremely skeptical of that idea. Lapis, I hate that he has to come to Scotland. I mean, good for you, fucking Scotland, for doing the good work of protesting and yelling at him and playing bagpipes over him, calling out his tiny fucking wiener and shit like that. Like, yeah, y'all do it correctly. Y'all do it 100% right. Always Sad but Truthful says, do you think the Epstein name list reaches beyond the USA? Global implications, thoughts? Absolutely, yeah. Jay says, but would you say that the Democrats do? They certainly didn't for years, right? Do what, Jay? You said that they do something. Chris, haircut looks good. Thank you. I think I like it to be a little taller on top. Taylor says, why do you support Palestine? I support Palestine for the same reason that I support Israel. I support the citizens that live there that are just trying to live their fucking lives. And I do not support Hamas, and I do not support the Netanyahu government. Vin Scully says, please explain further regarding who was in charge of sharing the Epstein files when Biden was in office. The person that was in charge is the guy that was in charge of the FBI, because they're the ones that had all of the evidence. And the person that was in charge was named Christopher Wray. He was a Republican who was appointed by Donald Trump. So if you want to know why he didn't release the information, ask him. All right. Vitamin E says, no, Hamas. Yes, people of Gaza. That is 100% my my position, Vitamin E. It's the Rocketeer says, yes, Chris Andrew was on the list. It's definitely international, says. So yeah, It's the Rocketeer confirms. Poppy says, what do you think of the influence of the Israeli lobby on U.S. politics? I think that it is toxic. AIPAC is a extreme right-wing organization that doesn't give a shit about marginalized people. They are, they are pro-ethnically cleansing the people of Palestine. We should be separating ourselves. We should not be electing politicians to take money from AIPAC. And if AIPAC uses their money to try to get certain politicians unelected, then we should support those politicians that AIPAC is trying to fight, is trying to get unelected. Because the reason why why so many politicians are, influenced by AIPAC, at the best possible language to say that they're influenced and the worst is to say that they're bought, is because what they do works. And there are great progressive Democrats who have lost their primaries because AIPAC put their support behind their competitors. So at the end of the day, it's all about who we vote for. So y'all need to fucking recognize when politicians are getting challenged by AIPAC and then support the other candidate, Schmavies says, is Kosovo a country? Is it? Kosovo? I think it is. That sounds vaguely familiar. Lindsay Reed says, will he pardon Maxwell if she lies for him? 100%. Let's see here. Travis says, why does AIPAC exist? Because people people in Israel wanted to have influence over American politics. All right, scrolling up. All right, scrolling up. Travis says, do you think Trump will attempt a third term? 100% without question. Trump is going to try to stay president until he dies. That is his singular goal, is to be president, to continue to be able to be bribed and to stay out of jail. I would bet the house on it, regardless of if he tries to cancel elections by declaring martial law or he tries to illegally run for a third term or whatever. Alrighty, let's see here. Jay, I'm still waiting for you to tell me, but would you say that the Democrats do? And I don't know what you mean by that, so please clarify, Jay, if you are still here. Scrolling down to the very bottom of the TikTok comments. Schmavi says, I was friends on Xbox with a dude from Kosovo, and he crashed out if somebody said it wasn't. Well, that sounds like it was then. Judah says, that's not a president, that's a tyrant. Completely agree. William R. Gladney says, regarding the fundamental restructuring of the U.S. federal government and unseen risk to civil rights, no question there. That is a statement of mine, William, is that there was no question in your statement. Bang says, what do you think Democrats can do to be more successful next election? Bang, excellent question. So the Democratic Party has been suffering for decades, being on the short end of our electoral system and of our information environment. The electoral systems are biased in favor of the Republican Party. Gerrymandering, the Senate map, the Electoral College, all of that helps elect Republicans, makes it easier to elect Republicans than Democrats. In addition, our information environment is skewed to helping Republicans and hurting Democratic Party. We judge the Democratic Party way harsher than we do the Republican Party. The Republican Party on net is way worse than people give it credit for, and the Democratic Party is way better than people give it credit for, and that is entirely the fault of the information environment, watering down negative headlines around the Republican Party and overhyping negative headlines around the Democratic Party. The billionaire class has completely captured the information environment, from mainstream news to right-wing propaganda to all of social media. So how do the Democrats fight that? I don't know if they can. I think we are the ones that need to do that work. Not because we're doing them a favor, but for our own best interest. We need to be fighting against those narratives that the Democrats are worse than they actually are, that the Republicans are better than they actually are. We need to be talking to people in real life to make sure that they are getting this message, because again, the internet is the Wild West. And no matter how good or positive your message is, it is very easy for it to get drowned out by billionaire propaganda and misinformation. So, yeah, I desperately hope that the Democrats do something brilliant and amazing to show the American people how much better they are. But I'm also not counting on our information environment allowing that message to get out there, because even when Democrats do something incredible for the American people, it either doesn't get shown to them, or it gets twisted and mushed up in a way to make it seem like it's a bad thing. The Affordable Care Act, for example, saved lives. It made it so that insurance companies could no longer discriminate against people who had pre-existing medical conditions. And what did the mainstream media take away from all that? They talked about death panels, which weren't fucking in there. Talked about the website not working correctly. And then that piece of legislation that saved people's lives, that made health care less expensive, it lost Democrats Congress in the very next election. So there you go. The information environment is prejudiced against the Democratic Party. All right, Lindsay Reed says, how do Democrats communicate better? Lindsay Reed, the way that they communicate better is we don't wait for them to communicate better. We do the communication for them. We are all mouthpieces for better politicians, and it is up to us to talk to our friends, our family, our neighbors, our coworkers, the people that already know us and trust us and love us, and convince them to vote for better politicians. Vote for better Democrats in the primary, and failing that, Democrats over Republicans. That is how we get a better country. Alrighty, let's see here. Back over on Twitch, we got, as more politicians age out of politics, what generation do you think will gain a majority? I think it's probably going to be Gen Z. Like there's a little bit of Gen X apathy, held over into the millennial generation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like a generation gap where most millennials don't get engaged in politics, but Gen Z does. But I could be wrong about that. I got no idea. All right, that's just a guess. Yeah, baby says, what are your thoughts on low approval poll results of Democrats, and do you see it going up before the midterm election? Again, the information environment is skewed against the Democratic Party. The culture has a habit of judging Democrats by a way harsher standard than the Republican Party. The Republican Party was completely in charge of the government when 9/11 happened, so that was their fault. That happened under their watch. They did that. And we still view the Republican Party as being the party of national security, even though they let the worst national security failure of American history take place. So, yeah, that's the reason why the low approval rating is, because there's a ton of misinformation and propaganda out there, skewing people's beliefs, convincing them that Democrats are worse than they are and that Republicans are better than they are, that, refusing to give Democrats any credit and refusing to give Republicans any blame. And do I see it going up before the midterm election? Probably not. Like, people treat voting for Democrats like it's eating vegetables or going to the fucking gym, when it really is just, it's better. It's better by a lot. I don't understand why it hurts you so much to vote in your own interests, Alrighty, Michelle says, no, Democrats' behavior is the problem. I don't think that's accurate, Michelle, and ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Redwater says, why ask you? Who are you? My name is Jared. I don't know a lot about politics. Right. The situation in the Democratic Party is so bad they need to flip almost every seat. That is also inaccurate, Michelle. So you're spreading misinformation on here. And you don't have a profile picture, so you are sus as hell. Tony Montana says the fair broadcasting law needs to be reenacted. I agree with that, Tony Montana, but I worry that it's not going to be enough. Like we already have these massive right-wing propaganda channels established. I don't know if the fairness doctrine is going to rein them in, Always Sad But Truthful says, I think the country's correction will come from within and foreign relation. Thoughts? The arc of justice does not bend by itself. I don't think that we're going to see the pendulum swing on its own. So if we want that correction to happen, Always Sad, we need to make that happen. And as far as like foreign relations are concerned, I don't, for as much as our allies can put pressure on elected representatives to do the right thing, there are just as many powerful adversarial nations like Russia and North Korea that are going to be trying to affect our politics as well. So I am not confident that either of those things are going to do the work for us. I think we need to do that work. Dan Blackroy, great to see you again. Burn Nest says the fixes don't work because they're not real about the problem. Burn Nest. Why are Democrats unrealistic? I don't think they are unrealistic. I think the problem is that they've been they haven't been enough unrealistic. They haven't, thought big enough, in my opinion. William R. Gladney says, your thoughts on this new form of systemic discrimination and segregation with class, not race? Interesting question, William R. Gladney. So the new form of systemic discrimination and segregation with class, not race. I wonder if you're referring to something specific, William, because it sounds pretty standard to me, the way that you're describing it, like the way that the billionaire class has, tried to create a new serfdom that they can rule over, and they don't have to worry about obeying any laws and shit like that. And the way that they have stoked racial tensions in order to keep us fighting amongst ourselves and not notice the fact that they're stealing all of our fucking money. So yeah, are you referring to something specific? Because that doesn't sound familiar to me. Ba says, I got a question. Put it in the chat. Evan McFarland says, you think you're so cool, don't you? I mean, I am cool. I'm significantly cool. I'm extremely cool. It's chronic. It runs in my family. Yeah, there's no cure, unfortunately, for how unbelievably fucking dope I am. Let's see here. Andy says, do you want to go camping? Kinda. That's not what he's talking about, says Dan Blackroy. Not really sure what you mean by that. Couch Potato Reaction says, what has Gavin Newsom done for California? Well, I actually have a list, because I don't love Gavin Newsom, but he has done some good things. Let's see here. Where's my Newsoms? He ended the death penalty in California. He put limits on police force. He enacted anti-poverty laws. Not enough, obviously, but definitely did some. And he enacted legislation that helped gig workers. So there you go. We have one of the most progressive tax structures in California, thanks to people like Gavin Newsom. So, rich people pay more and poor people pay less, which is the way it should be. Tony Montana says, what has Greg Abbott done for Texas? Nothing as far as I know. Couch Potato Reaction says, highest homelessness. That's definitely not Gavin Newsom's fault. That's a problem that has been decades in the making. Couch Potato Reactions. RJ says, dude, who cares? News scum rally. That's not a question, RJ. So you're out of here. Congratulations. Alrighty. Evan McFarland says, if you were to move to another country, where would you move to? Oh, that's a really good question. Probably Canada would be the easiest one, but me and my wife just went to Japan and we fucking loved it. I'm a big fan of Europe, so I'd be down with checking out France and Italy and Germany and Spain and shit like that. Yeah, top of the head. All right. It's the Rocketeer says, do you think the Kids Online Safety Act could be used for overreaching censorship like the current censorship law in the EU? Yes. My concern with the Kids Online Safety Act is that it will be used as a cudgel for the Trump administration to shut down progressive organizations and progressive thought leaders, things like that. Excuse me. Couch Potato Reaction says, because I don't think you know anything about California. Couch Potato Reactions, I'm from California. Scoo Bastev says, did you hear about us Reno folks? I heard there was a shooting there, and I hope that you and that everybody that you know is safe. Bees Churger says, do you think both Republican and Democratic parties in the U.S. are actually going to get stuff done? So Bees Churger, both parties do get things done. The difference is that the Republican Party does things that hurt people and help the rich, and the Democratic Party does things that help every American. And I can give you a dozen examples of that if you like. Shelby says, do you like where the voting age is at? I think 18 is fine. I am open to arguments to making it younger, like potentially 16, where the people that are in charge have been making decisions that have been fucking over the younger generations for a while, and potentially getting 16-year-olds involved might, help to balance that scale a little bit. But I'm not married to that idea. I don't think that, if somebody's hard line about keeping the voting age at 18, I am not going to, fight them on that. GI Joe says, when do you think the housing market will crash? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, according to some of the reports that I have read, a lot of the things that precipitated the first the crash in 2008 are happening again. So, yeah, baby says, do you support the Stop Killing Games movement? I know almost nothing about it. Yeah, baby. I apologize. I got nothing for you there. Ready. John 17 says, Fed won't let it crash easily. The Fed has almost no control over whether the market crashes or not. They can set interest rates. They can try to rein in inflation. They can either speed up or slow down the economy based on what they set that number to. But we had a Fed chair during 2008, and we had a market crash then. So yeah, and I think that it is unlikely that when Jerome Powell leaves and Trump appoints some idiot sycophant into that position instead, I think that it is unlikely that that person will be able to do anything to either curb inflation or stop a financial crash from happening. Alrighty, John 17 says they have leverage power though. The Fed? I mean, not if they get rid of Jerome Powell. Birdnest says, look at old car factory towns. For what exactly? The rich have money and leave first. Let's see here. People will leave to Canada if taxes are too high. Birdnest. So what you're doing is repeating right-wing billionaire propaganda points. Every time the progressive wing of America tries to do something like 40-hour work week or overtime pay or raising the minimum wage or allowing workers to have a weekend or fighting for benefits or unionization, then the rich always cry and they go, this is going to bankrupt us and there won't be any jobs and we're all going to move to Canada, etc. And then they almost never do. So they can miss me with that shit. They can fucking leave, and other people can replace those businesses and not be complete fucking assholes about it. You know how many fucking Walmarts there are in waiting for the Waltons to say, it's too, I don't like America anymore. Fucking hell yeah, man. Will fucking TJ Maxx fucking roll in there, All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Couch Potato Reaction says, how does having the highest cost of living in the country help the poor? Are you talking about California? California has some of the highest cost of living, but it's not the highest cost of living. Zeke Arday, good to see you again. The reason why cost of living is high in California is because it's a very popular place to live, and everybody wants to live here because the outcomes are better. If you can afford it, the outcomes are better. So education, healthcare, quality of life, all better in blue states than in red states. But it does mean that cost of living is much more difficult in places like that. So you can move to a place that's cheaper, but you get less and you have a worse life because of it. John 17 says, are tariffs inflationary or de-inflationary? They're inflationary. Everybody agrees. Birdnest says, if can't afford it due to taxes. The poor pay less taxes in California than they do in Texas. The rich pay more taxes in California than they do in Texas. So it's the exact opposite the way that things should be, Dan Blackbird says, California also has a higher minimum wage and better paying jobs, generally speaking. That is 100% accurate. Tony Montana says, if the billionaire want to leave, they will be taxed or extorted for their money. That is also accurate. Birdnest says, that's why people are leaving California. They're leaving because they can't afford it, because of the cost of living crisis. That was not caused by Democrats in California or nationally. It was literally caused by monopolies, which were caused by the Republicans, and it was caused by massive post-COVID inflation. That was also the fault of Trump and the Republican Party. Alrighty. Birdnest, you're not asking questions anymore. Start asking questions or you will get booted. Alrighty. Scrolling up, 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 scrolling up. All right. Soft crash in Florida. Ooh, Scott's saying that there's a soft housing market crash happening in Florida right now. How interesting. That's where it started last time. Could it be happening immediately right now? Ooh, how interesting. There are no Epstein files, says Donald Trump 420. I'm not in them. I turned down going to the island. All part of Mexico. Donald Trump 420. I still have not been able to put my finger on you, my guy. Let's see here. Landon says aliens are coming in November, bro. Oh God, I fucking welcome them. They will 100% do a better job than we are. Birdnest says, what would be a good tax rate? More for the rich, less for the poor. Birdnest. Couch Potato Reaction says, and how does that help the poor? You said Gavin helps the poor. Gavin passed a bunch of anti-poverty legislation to help the poor. Not enough, because the cost of living issues and the housing market issues were too substantive for just one governor in one term to be able to solve. All right, Boomer Kathy says, I like Gavin. He's fine in my opinion. He's still better than every Republican, but he's definitely not my favorite. Couch Potato Reaction says, no, he didn't. I mean, he literally did. So, you can just sit here and say no if you want, or you can just be substantive. And if you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. Birdnest says, it has to be an amount that can function all city service and be fair. All right. That sounds fine to me, Birdnest. So rich people should pay more and poor people should pay less. Seems like a pretty good system to me. Shelby says, how do you feel about Trump trying to remove the Board of Education? It's bad, Shelby. It's very bad. Yeah. And the fact that the Supreme Court is allowing him to do it is fucking wild, and it should motivate all of us to unelect every single Republican that is letting this happen right now. Let's see here. Boomer Kathy says, what's up about the Minnesota cyber attack? Ooh, actually, I haven't heard anything about that. Star says, thoughts on the rise of dog whistle ads? Star, I know you're talking about the Sydney Sweeney ad, and I agree that it is really easy to read that white supremacist message into that. It kind of seems, I don't know, I'm not sold that it was done intentionally. But yeah, dog whistles are a massive problem in our culture these days, where, instead of saying the N-word, they're saying things like, we need to protect our white culture, shit like that. Instead of saying, I'm against race mixing, they say, well, we just really want to know, we just want to have control over who our neighbors are. That seems to be fair to me, So, yeah, baby says, has the U.S. become a police state? It is on its way to becoming a police state, yeah, baby. The evidence that it is not is the fact that I am still here doing this show as opposed to rotting in a fucking alligator Auschwitz. Right. Lauren says it was racist as fuck, zooming in on her blue eyes and saying her blue jeans are superior. Come on, Lauren, I hear you. I hear this argument. My opinion is it feels like it could so easily just be an honest mistake. They sell blue jeans. Their company is jeans. Sydney Sweeney is attractive and has massive knockers. So that's good jeans, as opposed to just calling out her whiteness. I could be wrong about this. I'm not going to die on this mountain. But yeah, I'm also not going to be out here full-throatedly saying that they did a racist dog whistle on purpose. Alrighty, let's see here. Boo G Dynasty says, LMAO, only in America can you worry about an ad when there's a genocide. Let's not, what do you call it? Boo G Dynasty. Let's not throw stones. All right. So somebody cares about this ad does not mean that they do not also care about, the genocide happening in Palestine. Just because somebody's funding cancer research does not mean that they do not care about AIDS research. Just because somebody says Black Lives Matter does not mean that they don't care about white people living in poverty, W. Page says the people not noticing the racism at best is an indication of systemic racism. W. Page, I do find that to be a perfectly valid argument to make. And Lauren, I love you. I got nothing but respect for you. Let's see here. Respectfully, I disagree. They don't make mistakes when they write their $1 million ads. And Lauren, again, I am not dying on this mountain. I am completely open to the idea that I am wrong about this. Respectfully, I would point you to the Kylie Kendall Jenner Diet Pepsi ad where she stopped a a race riot against the cops by giving one of the cops like a Diet Pepsi or some shit like that. Like billion-dollar companies make massive ad mistakes all the time, you know? And you're my fave, Lauren. Flag of War Production says Newsom interstate projects are the perfect example of how to bipartisanship. Ooh, I didn't know too much about that, Fog of War Productions, but I'm down with what you're speaking my language. Mia's LV Adventures says, yeah, they don't understand the BLM is a protest about police brutality. Alrighty, let's see here. Thank you, Triska. I appreciate you being here. Alrighty, let's see here. Ryan says, also recreating Brooke Shields' ad when she was 14 and taken advantage of is so weird. Oh, was that literally just them calling back an ad they did with Brooke Shields when she was 14 years old? Maybe we could you know, we can put a fucking pin in the fact that she was underage at the time. But yeah, that's just another piece of evidence of this being, you know, unintentionally, you know, problematic. Right, Skibbity Sigma 54 says, do you support moral or strategic foreign policy? I think you can do both. I think that when we make moral decisions in foreign policy, we strengthen our strategic position. Alrighty, Steven says, do you think the UAE is committing genocide in Sudan? I'm pretty sure that that is what the international community has agreed to. Does not the UN and the ICC say that the UAE is doing a genocide in Sudan? I'm pretty sure. Apache says, who owns Epstein Island? I have no idea. Couch Potato Reaction says, do you honestly think you know about politics, or do you just read the propaganda campaigns? I know a lot about politics. So, yeah, no, and I don't read propaganda campaigns. Couch Potato Reactions. Tell me tell me what you think I am saying that is inaccurate, Couch Potato Reactions, instead of just calling me a shill or that I'm wrong. You know, you haven't said anything substantive. You're just here to say that I'm wrong. Let's see here. Fog War Productions says Utah has committed $200 million to the project already. California is spending $1 billion. Fog War Productions, you are educating me left and right, my guy. Let's see here. Mia's LV Adventure says, yeah, but they said something nefarious. Instead of jeans, they said jeans. Yeah, but let's, you know, Mia, yeah, you know, I'm not sold either way, you know. Birdness says, do you know finance? I know a little. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. 30-something says, the only person who scares me more than Donald Trump himself is Charlie Kirk. I mean, yeah, Charlie Kirk's a psychopath and he's young, you know. All of the fucking right-wing talking heads that look like they're making a run for president, like Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, like they all fucking suck. They're all fucking dangerous as hell. Alrighty. Well, this has been a great live stream so far, everybody. We are at 45 minutes around, and the comments have slowed down a little. So if you got any questions, put them in the chat, and I'm happy to engage with people in good faith, even if we disagree. My regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. For all of my regulars, I hope that you enjoy getting calm and chill Jarrett back instead of fighty Jarrett that was here yesterday and on Friday. So yeah, welcome to the party, pal. Birdness says, we know about money, you'll understand both sides. Not a question, Birdness. Couch Potato Reaction says, highest cost of living, gas prices, healthcare, how is that helping the poor? I don't get you. So Couch Potato Reactions, you are making some wild, you know, debate style leaps in logic where I'm saying that Gavin Newsom passed some anti-poverty legislation. I am saying that having a progressive tax structure where the poor people pay less and the rich people pay more is better for poor and working Americans. And in reaction to that, you have listed 3 things that are not Gavin Newsom's fault, the highest cost of living, gas prices, and healthcare, and asking how that helps the poor, which is not what I said. It did not say that the high cost of living, gas prices, and healthcare hurts the poor. I'm saying that these specific things that California and Gavin Newsom specifically did are designed to help the poor. Let's see here. Couch Potato Reaction says, I live in California. I have not seen any of that. Well, then I doubt that you are getting your news from reliable sources, Couch Potato Reactions. Shelby says, do you think all Republicans are usually wrong? So I don't think that every Republican voter is wrong or bad or stupid or evil. There are some, of course, who fall into those various categories. Some people vote Republican because they're straight up racist. Some people vote Republican because they're rich assholes and they don't give a shit who gets hurt, so long as they get richer and more powerful. But some people are just stuck in information bubbles and they have been told that this is the morally just thing to do, is to vote Republican, that you can't be a good person unless you are a Christian and a Republican and an American. But as far as like the Republican Party and Republican talking heads, almost always wrong, almost always massive pieces of shit who know that they're full of shit and lying to people, and they don't give a fuck about who they're hurting or what laws they are breaking. They just want more money and more power for their side. Steven says most people in America are racist, to be frank. I mean, racism is a scale, you know, just like sexuality is a scale where it's not just straight and gay, there's many subtle levels. There's subtle levels of racism as well, you know, like you've got your straight up KKK members, but you also got like good-natured grandpas who are like, I think black people are great dancers, and you're like, grandpa, you're really not allowed to say that anymore, you know, shit like that. And then, you know, you just have people with unconscious biases the way that everybody does, you know. So yeah, it's a little unproductive to say most people in America are racist, to be frank, when, you know, it is more accurate to say that some people are suffering from unconscious biases, and then there's a scale of from that to fucking David Duke, Donald Trump, fucking full-on racist shit. Madam Malignant says, should world-famous drag queen Trixie Mattel be the next president? I mean, she couldn't do better. She couldn't do worse than our current presidents. Fogwar Production says humans are inherently tribalism, of course. Everyone is at least a little racist against somebody. Yeah. Steven says it's actually productive to acknowledge the truth and not coddle these people. Well, I mean, nuance is productive, Steven, not what you're doing. All right, I need to calm down a little bit. So taking a couple of breaths, Couch Potato Reaction says Democrats founded the KKK. How are Republicans the racist one? Couch Potato Reactions, I am going to ask you a question and I want you to answer, okay? Are you aware that the two political parties, Democrats and Republicans, switched their ideologies regarding race relations in the 1970s? Are you aware of that or are you not aware of that? Couch Potato Reactions. A simple I was aware or I was not aware is all I am asking you for. Because you have put in my chat one of the most bullshit propaganda, misinformation statements that exists in modern political communications. So please tell me if you were aware of that or not aware of that, if you don't believe it happened, if you are just ignoring that fact because you want to push a specific narrative. Like, let me know what the deal is. Couch Potato Reactions. I am scrolling down to the bottom. Bird Nest says, wouldn't what you just said make poor people Democrats? Yes, Bird Nest, but unfortunately we are suffering through an information environment that convinces poor people to vote against their best interest. Bird Nest. All right, scrolling down the bottom. Let's see here. Bird Nest says they didn't switch. Okay. Couch Potato Reaction says, yes, so you did know that the parties switched, and yet you still put that comment there. It seems like you're completely full of shit. It seems, Couch Potato Reactions, that you knew the party switched ideologies, and yet you still put that out there. Couch Potato Reactions says, but that's not accurate. Okay, man. Yeah, no. Sorry, man. You're found out. You're found out. You're using talking points to push a narrative as opposed to actually engaging on the facts. If you know that the Republican Party is the party of racists right now, and the Democratic Party is not, and it used to be otherwise, and then it switched, and you still put that comment, like, you're not here to engage in good faith. You're here to prove yourself right. You are here to spread misinformation. Alrighty. Birdness says, why would rich people want to help poor people that don't want to work? Most poor people want to work, Bird Nest. People aren't poor because they're lazy. They are poor because the system of capitalism keep them poor. That our economy is structured in a way that makes it really difficult for people to stop being poor once they are poor. So yeah, I would encourage you to not think about poor people like that, to not demonize them in a way, you know, where the right wing and the billionaire class has spread these welfare queen, lazy people narratives in order to make it seem like welfare is bad, or food stamps are bad, or that you're a worse person for being poor. You know, there but for the grace of God go I. It could happen to any of us, given a certain number of situations that we could not control. You know, a healthcare emergency, a fire. You know, there but for the grace of God go I, my guy. Card analyst says, why don't the red states have the poorest people? That is accurate, card analyst. What if says that's why the United States has more self-made millionaires and billionaires than any country. I don't know if that's accurate. What if I do know that most self-made millionaires and billionaires have rich parents. Let's see here. Mia says, I love how smart you are. I love you saying nice things about me, Mia. Birdnest says, I'm poor. I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm sure that you are a very hard worker. It's incidentally, poor people are the hardest workers. They're the ones that have fucking 3 jobs and sleep like 3 hours a night while they're trying to support a family and shit like that. You will never convince me that a CEO making millions of dollars works harder than a janitor with 3 jobs. Let's see here. JM says, I'm sorry, do I need to follow to get a question answered? You do not need to follow to get a question answered. But, I got a bunch of people commenting shit, so people's comments get lost sometimes. So if I missed your comments, then feel free to put it again. I'm not going to get mad at you. All right, card analyst says, why do Republicans vote against their own self-interest? Because they've been conned by misinformation and propaganda. The billionaire class has put a lot of time, money, and energy into convincing people of the specific narratives that get Republicans elected or get people to just not vote. And it is paying off. It is paying dividends. Every time Republicans are in control of the government and they cut taxes and regulations so that they can poison us with the fucking runoff from their chemical factories, they know that the money that they spent on this misinformation and propaganda campaign is paying dividends. Yeah, baby, over on Twitch says, do you think the Democrats have been successful in their push to reach young men so far? Have you noticed a difference in young men's opinions of Democrats since the presidential election? I mean, it's been, such a tiny amount of time, yeah, baby. I don't know if they've even started, So yeah. I think I'm glad that the Democrats are reaching out to every voter. But I don't know what they've done specifically yet. And I have not seen any evidence that the needle has moved at all yet. It's been a heartbeat, What if says, that's rich listening to this guy talk about misinformation. I mean, what do you think that I have said that is inaccurate? Brody Clark says, do you think Trump is a dictator? He's trying to be. I don't know if he is one yet. Chris Harrison says, thoughts on Republican syndicalism? I think it's better than capitalism and Marxism, Leninism, to be honest. I have never heard that expression before, Republican syndicalism. Let's see here. East meets Westy Bestie says, so by virtue of having rich parents, they are not self-made. Completely accurate. Shawnee Flytrap says, honestly, he feels like he's getting close to being one of the dictators, I think is probably what you are getting at, Shawnee Flytrap. Brecken Kramer says, communism right now like capitalism? I don't know what that question means. Sigma says, can I become president? I don't know what UNC means. Are you calling me Unk? Can I become a president, Unk? Yeah, I think you just have to be over the age of 36 or some shit. Andrew says, should Democrats offer a woman for 2028 presidency? Sounds like you're talking about a sacrifice, Andrew. We sacrificed this virgin woman for the presidency in 2028. I don't think that the DNC should put their weight behind any candidate. I think that people should run in the primary and that people should vote for who they like the best. I am worried that the Democratic voting base is going to be gun shy around nominating somebody who is not a straight white male, because Donald Trump has lost once, only to a straight white male, but he beat Hillary Clinton, a woman, and he beat Kamala Harris, a woman of color. So I think that the Democratic Party base is potentially going to vote for somebody who looks like Gavin Newsom, even if what they want is somebody who looks like, or somebody who legislates like AOC. All right. Republican syndicalism is essentially libertarian socialism. I think that, Chris has risen. Much love and respect, but sometimes it sounds like you're just putting words together in a bowl and mixing them together. Lauren says, now we can't afford to run a woman in this country. America hates women. And here we have exactly what I'm talking about. You know, a left-leaning voter who believes that America is too misogynistic to elect a woman president. And I don't know if Lauren is right or wrong. I just know that there are voters out there who feel that way. And yeah, it makes me nervous. You know, the idea that that the primary might go to somebody who is gay or of color or a woman, and then we find out exactly how misogynistic and racist and homophobic America still is. You know, I don't know what the answer is to that question. Goblin says, leave the Dems and join a socialist organization, like immediately. I mean, the Democrats are the closest thing to a socialist party that can actually win elections. That's why I am still a Democrat. Birdnest says Republicans are going to win again because Trump will pick he follow up. Birdnest, I don't know if that's accurate. Also, that's not a question. Jay Pesh says, can I join? I almost never have people join, but if you stick around and ask a question, prove to me that you are here in good faith, then maybe I will change my mind. Gotcha Potato Reaction says, I might have missed it. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? I'm pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because the Republican Party's platform does not actually decrease the number of abortions. It only makes pregnancy more dangerous for women, particularly poor women. All right. Chris has risen says, liberalism is a slow death, still serving the elites. I don't know if that word equals what you said, Chris has risen. Let's be specific. Let's get away from these, you know, semantic arguments about what liberalism is or Republican syndicalism. You know, like let's talk about actual policies. You know, Jay Pesh says, "Can I be an American and still not like our country?" Yeah, I think it is completely fine to criticize your country so that it can be better. You know, I don't think that it is. I don't think you are a productive citizen of the country if you just accept everything that your country and government does as great just by virtue of it being American. Priest Strong says, should Mormon temples be open to the public? I don't know if Mormon temples are or aren't. Should religious groups only allow people of their religion in? I don't know. I've honestly never thought about that. Part of me is like, oh, you know, let people have their religions, and if my religion says you're not allowed to come in, then that's the religion kind of a thing. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to die on that mountain. That's for damn sure. All right. Has smiley face with sunglasses says, for students across the country, what would be the most prestigious internship experience? Oh, I have no idea what that would be. I always recommend people work for political campaigns. I feel like you get a lot of exposure to different types of people and different kind of jobs, and you know, it's better. It's good no matter what industry you decide to go into to embed yourself with a campaign that you believe in. Card Analyst says, should they remove party affiliations on voting ballots? I don't think so. I think it's perfectly valid to vote for the Democratic platform over the Republican platform, even if you don't know who that specific politician is. I think if you really want to whittle down into who these people are, vote in the primary. Try to get people to vote for a specific Democrat or a specific Republican in the primary. But after that is happening and the general election is there and we have two very wildly different platforms that we can either vote for or against, I have no problem being like, yeah, Democrat up and down the ballot. I am voting for the pro-union, pro-environment, pro-taxing the rich, pro, you know, our allies, pro actually protecting the country from foreign, you know, foreign threats, you know, shit like that. Alrighty, term limits, says Travis. I'm for term limits. And the Democratic Party is also for term limits, but the Republican Party isn't. So if you want term limits, you need to vote for Democrats. Dylan says, do you have or want a family? What, do you have one for sale? Lesby Ann says, I agree with Lauren. Look at the laws being enacted that disparage, denigrate women. Yeah, I mean, there is a ton of evidence to suggest that not only is America still extremely misogynistic, but that there has been a turn towards misogynism since the information environment has been skewed in that direction. You know, with the rise of like incel and red pill culture, it really appears as though all the worst isms, you know, like misogynism and anti-Semitism and racism and homophobia-ism, they're all on the rise. And we should vote for the kind of politicians that work towards ending that divisiveness instead of the ones that are encouraging it because it helps them get elected, Republicans. Stephen N says, bruh, America not being misogynistic, they just distract you with pink washing. Stephen, again, I think you're being too cynical, my guy. I think misogyny in America has gone like this. You know, it's on a track to being better. It's better in this millennia. Misogyny is less than it was in the last millennia. In the 21st century, it is less misogynistic than the 20th century. Crispy's take says, "Wait, I don't think homophobia is a thing." I know. I was doing a bit there. Crispy's take. Couch Potato Reaction says, "How? Explain that one, because I haven't seen a single law that makes it more dangerous to abort." Couch Potato Reactions, again, just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think that you are not getting your information from accurate sources, because there are laws in red states right now that make it more dangerous for a woman to be pregnant, where a doctor does not feel legally safe doing an abortion that a woman might need to survive or to save her fertility. There are at least 5 women who have died because of abortion bans in red states. That is the number before the 2024 election happened. It's probably higher now. There are women who have been tortured because they had to wait in the parking lot for their situation to get so bad that doctors felt legally safe to perform medically necessary abortions on them. That is a fact. That is a 100% fact. Abortion bans do not reduce the number of abortions. They only make abortions and pregnancy more dangerous for women. Couch Potato Productions, let me know what you think about those facts that I just dropped on you. Dan Blackwood said, "They just used a dead woman's body as an incubator in my state." There is another excellent example there, Dan Blackwood, with the assist. Crispy says, "Adriana Smith was a state incubator here in Atlanta." Yeah, everybody's talking about the lady in Atlanta. Crocodile says, "Do you support the emergence of an independent socialist party for workers?" I think that we need to be strategic about how we view third-party candidates. Because on the one hand, until we have ranked choice voting, every third-party candidate is only going to be a spoiler candidate. We should also keep in mind that every major third party, like the Green Party or the Libertarian Party, they're not doing the work to actually build up this sort of infrastructure and national support to actually win elections. They only do these ego-driven, cash grab spoiler candidate presidential runs every 4 years. So do I think that we need a new party? Maybe it might be a good idea. I think it is much more productive. I think we're going to see better, stronger, more substantive change happen quicker if instead we reform the Democratic Party as opposed to starting a new party. And I should also mention that without ranked choice voting, third parties would just be spoiler candidates, and the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. And so, again, if you want this progressive change, you have to vote for Democrats. Alrighty, let's see here. John Bradley says, "Do you think the abortion ban is a conspiracy to augment plummeting U.S. birth rates?" I don't know if I would call it a conspiracy theory, John Bradley. I think there are multiple motivations to the Republican Party using abortion bans. It wins them elections with the religious right. It makes poor people more desperate, and that is part of the billionaire agenda, because when people are desperate, they can't afford to go to college or protest or boycott or strike or try to get a different job. If their boss is sexually harassing them, they have fewer avenues to, they have less time and energy to fight, basically, to fight their situation. And it entrenches the rich in their positions the same way that it entrenches the poor in poverty. But yeah, they have said as much, that they believe that we need to do this for the declining birth rate, which is dumb also because that doesn't work like that. Quinn Riley says, "How do we bypass bipartisan political theater, and what are some actionable items to fix our trajectory?" Excellent question, Quinn Riley. So, short version, I have this all on my Discord, everybody. So if you want to be part of the solution, I would recommend everybody check out my Discord. I have got a thread posted called The Work. That is what we do. It is how we bypass bipartisan political theater, is ignore the worst versions of the left and the right that you see on the internet. Because the internet is currently being used by the billionaire class and by adversarial nations to not only spread misinformation and propaganda, but also to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. So we know that they've done this. We have at least one example of Russian bots creating two Facebook groups that supposedly started in Texas, and then getting real people to fight in real life based on that. So do not judge the random person on the internet who's calling you a libtard cuck, and do not judge the random Democrat on the internet who's calling you a MAGA fascist. Talk to people in real life. That is how we get past this. I perform stand-up. I've been to 49 states. I have talked to people of every political stripe, and nobody is the worst version of their online selves. When people tell me about these purity tests that happen on the left, never seen it in real life. When people talk to me about these fucking fascists that you saw on the Jubilee video, never seen it in real life, never once. I did a show in New Hampshire, and I was selling I wrote a book making fun of Kellyanne Conway and Donald Trump, and I was selling that at the show. And there were nice people there who were coming up and buying my book who had worked for the Trump campaign. You know, so that's how we get past it. Is we have to ignore the internet. The internet is lying to us on purpose. And what was the other thing? And the trajectory. What's the trajectory? What do we do to stop the trajectory that we are on? So part of talking to people in real life is making sure that they are not believing any misinformation or propaganda. It is about being organized and boycotting and striking and protesting, putting political pressure on our elected representatives. And the number one thing that we need to do is own the midterm elections. If we can unelect every Republican that is up for re-election in the midterm elections so that Democrats take the House and get as many fucking seats as they can in the Senate, up to and including 67 seats in the Senate, that is how we stop the trajectory that we are on. That is how we get accountability. That is how we get the Republican Party to pay a political price for Trump's crypto coin, for the fucking Qatari jet that we're spending $1 billion of our taxpayer dollars on, the fucking the famine that's happening in Gaza that Donald Trump is allowing to happen, the global instability that is off the fucking charts thanks to people like fucking Donald Trump and his stupid fucking Secretary of State with 4 jobs who's not actually doing his fucking job, the fucking alligator Auschwitz sending fucking legal residents to concentration camps in El Salvador, closing rural hospitals, a massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in this country. The Republican Party needs to pay an electoral price for all of that shit. That is the most important thing that we can do. And we do it in person. We talk to people. And then they talk to their friends, and they talk to their friends, and they talk to their friends. We need to phone tree our way out of misinformation and into an activated and educated American public. Woo-wee! Sorry about that rant being so fucking long, everybody. Lesbienne says, what happened to the emoluments clause? The emoluments clause still exists. It's just that the Republican Party is not trying to, what do you call it? They're not using it. They are not holding Trump accountable for that massive constitutional violation. Steven says, Democrats started this genocide in October. Are you kidding? The Democratic Party did not start this genocide in October. That is not what happened, Steven. The right-wing Israeli government has been slowly building to this for a decade, maybe longer. So to put this on the Biden administration is wildly inaccurate. It is exactly that kind of cynicism that I am encouraging you to not do. But let's be clear about Biden and his administration's culpability in what has turned into a genocide in Gaza. Because the Biden administration did some good talking around putting Netanyahu on notice and holding his feet to the fire to stop doing war crimes against the people of Palestine. But behind the scenes, just continued sending them money, continued sending them weapons. And it was fucking disgusting, man. Now, here's the thing, Stephen, and you need to recognize this, Stephen. You need to accept and understand this. Because we agree that what Biden did in regards to this issue was beyond wrong. It was abhorrent. But you got to recognize, my guy, because it's a fucking fact, that what Trump is doing is worse. That the Republican Party's position on this issue is worse than what Biden did. And that the Democrats' platform going forward is to stop this, is to stop sending money to Israel, is to stop allowing Netanyahu to do whatever the fuck he wants, is to put pressure on Israel to start treating the people in Palestine like they're real fucking people as opposed to second-class citizens. Stephen, I need you to acknowledge that fact, man, because it is a fact. Alrighty. Stephen says Trump couldn't be doing this without Biden. That is wildly inaccurate. But I'm not going to fight with you on this, man. I can't continue saying facts about Israel, Gaza, and then just have you saying no, in response. Yeah, Steven, sorry, you're out of here, man. You crossed the line. You crossed the line. Scrolling down to the bottom. Ready. Rowan Orant says, all on the same side, just dividing y'all. No, that is inaccurate, Rowan. The parties are different. The politicians are different. The outcomes, depending on who is in charge, are different. So you can miss me with that both sides bullshit. XACU. Who's XACU? Is that a person that's in here? XACU. Lauren. All right, I see you now, XACU. What did you say that started this whole interaction? XACU. Looking for the original comment. Looking for the original comment. Looking for the original comment. XACU says, define politics in one sentence. Politics is how we discuss the work of the government, how we discuss the difference between the political parties. Doesn't seem why. I don't understand why y'all are fighting over that, What happens to your account at the Fed when you pay your taxes? Weird thing. Weird. That shit's weird. Alrighty. My favorite Lincoln quote is, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. This is the way. I like that a lot. Alrighty, everybody. Mia's LV Adventure says, how do we get big money out of politics? Excellent question, Mia's LV Adventure. Short version, we need to vote for Democrats because the Democratic Party is the only party that has been putting forward legislation and working towards getting money out of politics. The Republican Party has only done things to make the influence of money in politics greater, to make corruption and bribery easier, more legal, and harder to find. And I can give you examples of that, Mia, if you like. Another part of getting money out of politics, we have to make sure that the politicians that we are voting for in the primary are going to do the big things. Like, do you support a constitutional amendment or legislation to try to undo Citizens United? Do you agree with strengthening the Federal Election Commission, I think is the agency that makes sure that when people do fucking election crimes, election finance crimes, that we actually hold them accountable for that. Publicly funded elections is another good policy to advocate for, and we got to elect those people, And we need to recognize when we are falling for billionaire propaganda. So billionaire propaganda is not just, hey, centrists, go fight progressives. Progressives, go fight centrists. Republican voters, go fight trans kids. It's not just that. It's not just the distraction game of look over here while we're stealing all your money. It's also the Republican Party is great. It's also the Republican Party isn't as bad as people say it is. It's also both parties are the same. It's also nothing ever changes. It's also your vote doesn't matter. All of that stuff that keeps people from electing Democratic politicians, the kind of politicians that threaten the billionaire's position at the top of the fucking pyramid, all of that propaganda needs to be ignored and not bought up, And it's subtle and it's insidious. There are people out there who claim that they are left-wing creators saying shit like the Democratic Party had so many opportunities to codify Roe versus Wade and they just didn't because they didn't want to. They wanted to keep this as an election issue. That is a lie that has been spread by quote-unquote left-wing creators and that very intelligent, smart friends of mine have fallen for. And so, the reason why billionaires put so much money into these narratives is because they work. And we need to stop letting them work. And the way that we stop letting them work is by talking to people in real life and making sure and correcting any misinformation that they might have inadvertently absorbed into their psyches. Rowan Arant says, do you think congressmen and women should be able to trade stocks? I do not believe that they should. And the Democrats are the ones who have been working on a bill to stop that. Love Life says, why aren't the Dems leaders louder? That's a massive question, Love Life, and I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I'm at an hour 20 and I'm actually kind of tired. So I don't know if I can get into that whole fucking thing right now. Short version is Democrats get yelled at no matter what they do. regardless of if they get yelled at for being too far to the left, too far to the right, doing too much, doing too little. So the people that are in charge of the Democrats' Rainbow Coalition, they try to be very careful about everything that they say. Because they know they're going to get yelled at no matter what they do. That's the short version. All right, everybody, I got to get out of here. Thank you for the likes, the subscribes, and everything. Thank you for all the supports. I really appreciate every little bit of support that you guys can give me, whether it is the free kind like liking and sharing and subscribing and telling your friends how great my streams are and recommending me to everybody that you meet, strangers, friends, family, shouting my name from the rooftops, etc. Or if you want to support financially, you can. You don't have to, but you can. I have a Patreon that you can join. You find it on my website, jaredbernstein.com. I have a store that you can buy things from, also on my website, jaredbernstein.com. And you can send gifts and subscribe on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube. I see a bunch of people sent gifts today, Jay Pesh and Lindsay Reed and Triska. I really appreciate you guys being gifters. My normal schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can find my schedule on my website, both for stand-up and live streaming. If there were any questions that you think of later that I was not able to answer today, then hit me up. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. I have a Discord channel that you can join, and you can reach me there for comments. This project that I have of unelecting every Republican, it does not stop when my live stream stops. So hit me up, whenever. I just want y'all to be part of the project. I want y'all to be involved in the work, and I want to be as much help in getting you involved as I possibly fucking can, whether that is pointing you in the direction of great organizations or letting you know, like, how do I talk to this person about this issue to try to convince them to be on the right side of it, whatever you need. I am here for you. I am a resource that I would love for everybody to utilize so that we can fix all this fucking bullshit that is going on around here. So yeah, don't be shy. Reach out and do the work, everybody, because if we all do the work, Lauren says, no, you're not, they're not, you ignored my message. I didn't see your message. Let's see here. Wait. Lauren, we weren't fighting, Jared. They're just wildly confused, and I thought you could help. Sorry, Lauren. Yeah, I know. I didn't see anything of the fight. I missed whatever was happening. There was just, oh, you DM'd me? I didn't see that you had DM'd me. I need to double check. But also, I got my website. You can hit me up on, Lauren, the Discord. If you're not reaching me one place, try somewhere else. Let's see here. So yeah, Lauren, I got nothing but love for you. Mark Graves says, do you think Trump will not try but will block the midterms? He will definitely try. I don't know if he'll be successful, but he will definitely try. I didn't want to reach Tucker levels. You're good, Lauren. You've earned yourself a lot of credibility and what do you call it? And grace. You've earned a lot of grace. All right, everybody, I'm out of here. Have an excellent Tuesday. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.